Our next guest, her name is Eva Dominguez. She's from the ARA, and she's here, and she's the legislative, what is your title?
Legislative representative.
She's a legislative representative from ARA. I apologize. We've been having a lot of things going on. And so, what I want you to do is please give her your full attention. And Eva, I'm just going to ask you one favor. I don't want you getting these guys all riled up out here.
Over here.
Just got them calmed down. Okay. So anyway, let's give her a warm machinist welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and I apologize for the little difficulty we had at the beginning. I recognize many faces here, and I love coming to speak with this group. So very excited to be here today. I just wanted to give you, just so you know, the legislative, it's really the name of the department is Government and Political Affairs. So we have a dual role there. Part of it is keeping up with what's going on in Congress, and you do all kinds of like fact sheets to let you know what's happening on, especially on issues that affect seniors. And then we have, the political angle of it, which is really where we keep track of how members of Congress vote. I know that Rich Fiesta, our executive director, was here a couple of days ago, and he kind of told you that we have this voting record that we put out. We also, at this time this year, it's a campaign year, we do a candidate questionnaire, and that's what we're going to be doing, especially once the primaries are over. We send out candidate questionnaires, and then we do endorsement events. So just want to talk a little bit about the legislative part right now. And then we'll go on to talk a little bit about the political issues as well. So I just want to go back a little bit about what happened last year. Last year, right before Speaker Boehner resigned from office, they were able to come to an agreement on the budget. They were, because of the Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate, and some very intransigent, very conservative Tea Party Republicans, they were having a real difficult time passing anything. But right before Speaker Boehner resigned, they did pass a bipartisan agreement, and it did many things that we liked. It didn't go as far as we would have liked, but there are some good things in it. One of the things that it did is it raised the sequester level for 2 years. Now, how many of you guys remember what the sequester is? Okay, the sequester was the 2% across-the-board cut that was done for every agency in the government. And when they passed this back in 2011, it was supposed to start in 2013 and go through 2021. And this cut was supposed to be evenly distributed between defense and non-defense. That was one of the things that that Democrats were able to do because Republicans, unfortunately, are happy to cut non-defense spending, but they don't want to cut defense. But Democrats stuck tough, and that was the agreement. And we're very, very happy that the sequester was lifted because many programs that affect seniors, like Meals on Wheels, transportation funding, housing, just a number of things were being really affected, and we needed to get some more revenue. So what it did was it increased spending by $80 billion for, again, it was supposed to be evenly divided between defense and non-defense. The first year, which was last year, it increased spending by $50 billion. And this year, which is fiscal year 2017, and that starts actually in October 1st of this year, it was supposed to increase it by $30 billion. It also raised the debt ceiling until 2017, and if you recall, a couple of years ago, there was a huge fight about the debt ceiling, and the government actually had to shut down. It cost, like $10 billion to the economy. It was terrible. So by lifting it to 2017, at least we don't have to worry about it until next year. The other thing that it did is that it extended the solvency of the Disability Insurance Trust Fund. Now, can I have a show of hands of, how many of you guys know what the Disability Insurance Trust Fund is? Okay, a lot of you do. It's basically a trust fund within Social Security. There's two different trust funds within the Social Security system. One is the old age and survivors insurance, and it does exactly what it says. It provides pension benefits for retirees. It also provides funding for survivors and widows and things of that nature, surviving children. The other one is the Disability Insurance Trust Fund, which is basically if you have some sort of disability that you develop later in life, or if you were injured, and it could be you could walk down the street and you got hit by a car, and you can no longer work. The Disability Insurance Trust Fund is there for you to be able to pay benefits so you can continue to, live a decent life. When you pay when workers pay the FICA tax, that payroll tax, 5.3% goes into Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, and 0.9% goes into the Disability Insurance Trust Fund. And again, we all pay for it. It's not something that is a government giveaway. As we work, as workers, we pay into it so that we have it there in case we need it. Well, that trust fund was going to experience a 20% cut in 2016. And part of the reason is that, as you may recall, a few years back in 1983, they raised the age of retirement. So it was 65, the normal age for retirement, and then it's right now 66, and by the time I retire, it'll be 67. So what does that mean? It means that people are basically staying on disability insurance longer before they can get on old age and survivors insurance. And that was part of the reason that the trust fund was going to experience the shortfall. But also, 20 years ago was the last time they looked at the trust fund and how much is allocated to that trust fund. And they knew that 20 years down the road, they would have to make little adjustments to make sure that it's, that it's solvent for the future. And there's something very simple that Congress can do. It's called reallocation, which is just providing a little bit more money from the FICA tax, towards the Disability Insurance Trust Fund. And that would make it solvent until 2034, which is when the Social Security disability, when the Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund runs out, not runs out of money, but basically doesn't have money to pay full benefits. By 2034, we will have to make some tweaks so that, the Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund can also continue to pay full benefits. But we have about 20 years to go. So this, we wanted to just do something called reallocation, which would have made it whole until 2034. But Republicans didn't want to do that, and especially Republicans in the House. On the first day of that Congress was in last year, they actually passed something that said that you could not reallocate the funds to the Disability Insurance Trust Fund unless you made tweaks to the program. What they mean by tweaks is basically that they wanted to make it more difficult for people to get disability insurance. And if anybody knows anyone on disability or has a family member, they know that it's not easy to get disability. It takes about 2 years to get disability insurance. You have to go through a number. The first time you submit your claim, it's almost automatically, denied, and then you have to reapply. It's a very long process. And so the idea that they were trying to make it more difficult for people to get disability insurance is really crazy. Well, anyway, in this agreement, they were able to extend the trust fund at least to 2022. It's not as much as we would like, but at least we have a few years that we can rest easy. The other thing that it did is that it reduces the Medicare premiums and deductibles for people that are not held harmless. And what I mean by this is that this year, as you all know, there was no cost of living adjustment. And there is a provision that when there's no Social Security cost of living adjustment, that you do not have to pay higher Medicare premiums. Because the idea is that they don't want you to be able to have a certain amount coming in this year, and then next year you have this huge increase in Medicare and no COLA, and then you're living with less money. So this hold harmless provision was put in place to protect, so that if there's no COLA, you don't have to pay higher Part B and Part D premiums under Medicare. But there are certain people that were not held harmless. There was about 30%. These were people that were just becoming enrolled in Medicare. so it's the first year they're enrolled. Also, if you are a higher income beneficiary, right now, higher income beneficiaries pay higher premiums under Medicare, both for Part B, which pays the doctor portion of Medicare, and Part D, which is the prescription drug portion of Medicare. So this was basically, those higher income individuals would not be held harmless. And the other thing is low income beneficiaries, people that qualify for Medicare and Medicaid, they were not held harmless. And then there's a fourth group of people, which are people who have pensions. Most of them are basically public sector retirees, and these are people like teachers, firefighters, police that had public pensions and were not, their Medicare payment was not deducted from their Social Security. For those people, they were not held harmless. And those individuals, that was 30% of Medicare beneficiaries, they were going to, not only were they not held harmless, meaning they had to pay higher Part B and Part D premiums, but they had to pay for everybody that was held harmless, for the 70% that was held harmless. So their benefits would be, their premiums would be increased dramatically. In this agreement, we were able to make sure that they are only paying for the portion that applies to them, that they don't have to pay for the 70% that are held harmless. So that was a very important thing, especially for, like I said, for teachers, firefighter, police, state workers, things of that nature. So then we fast forward to this year, and the Republicans this year, had their budget, and it was a few years ago we used to talk about the Ryan budget, because he was the budget chairman. Now, of course, he's the speaker, and we have a new chairman, it's Congressman Price. Well, the Price budget is even worse than the Ryan budget, if you can imagine. It cuts there's like $7 trillion in cuts over a 10-year period. They fast-track cuts to Social Security, which was also in the Ryan budget. It repeals the Affordable Care Act. And then it did a whole number of things to alter the Medicare program. And one of the great things about the Medicare program is that it provides guaranteed benefits for everything that is medically necessary. And of course, it doesn't cover dental, vision, and hearing, but anything that's medically necessary is covered. And there's no limit. There's no annual limit. There's no lifetime limit. If you, for instance, have a massive heart attack and need bypass surgery, and then 4 months down the road you come down with cancer, Medicare will continue to pay. They won't tell you, oh, you've run out of your benefits. Well, one of the things that they want to do is they want to change that, and they want to give you a voucher. Or, like some people call it, a coupon. Yeah. They want to give you a coupon, so they'll give you part of the funding, but they're not going to give you all of it. And they want you to go shop around, either go to a private insurer and get your care, or get it through traditional Medicare. It's a limited amount of money. It's not, and so what happens is that you will end up having to pay more money to have the care that you're getting right now. And the way it would work is that basically anytime you have private insurers involved, very much like the Medicare Advantage program right now, what they do is they siphon off all the healthier beneficiaries, and that leaves Medicare with some of the sicker beneficiaries. Well, what that is going to do is that it's going to increase costs under traditional Medicare. So people that are not really, that are kind of healthy are going to say, why am I going to stay with traditional Medicare when I can pay less if I go with the private plan? So then they'll go with the private plan, and then you got Medicare stuck with the absolute sickest people. And what that's going to do is that it's going to make it extremely costly. Those people are going to have to pay higher premiums. It's going to cost the government more money, and it's going to get to a point where it could end up destroying the Medicare program. So when you hear out there, and you hear it, we heard it from a lot of the presidential candidates. Marco Rubio from Florida was saying this. You'll hear from Paul Ryan. You'll hear from a number of people running for office that they're not going to, that the changes are going to affect people 55 and under, that they're not going to affect you. Well, it might not affect you, that they're not going to affect retirees. So it might not affect you the first year, it might not affect you the second year, maybe 5 years, but 10 years down the road, or maybe sooner, you could be affected. So this plan of providing vouchers, or they call them premium support, is not a good thing. It completely alters the way Medicare is. And they will tell you that they're going to modernize Medicare. They're going to tell you that they're going to cap out-of-pocket costs. They're going to, put like a positive spin on it, but the bottom line is they are going to shift cost onto beneficiaries. And that's just it. So it's really, really bad. And they have a number of changes that they want to do, and all of it is just shifting cost onto beneficiaries. So this is the Republican budget, and this separate bill that they're doing with $30 billion in cuts, they had to do because the conservatives, the Tea Party folks, the people in the Freedom Caucus, were not happy that the sequester was lifted by $30 billion. They didn't want the sequester to be lifted. But now there are defense hawks in the Republican caucus that said, wait a second, we want to lift it for defense. So they didn't want to completely do away with it. So they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make $30 billion in cuts to mandatory programs. And they're going to take it from Medicaid. They're going to take it from the Children's Health Insurance Program. So they have a separate bill that's $30 billion in cuts. But the Tea Party is still not happy because it's a separate bill. They wanted it to be part of the entire budget. So the budget was not able to get put through this year because of that, because of the fact that the Tea Party wanted the $30 billion to be included in the first budget. So during the budget, during the markup of the budget in the Budget Committee, Democrats offered 28 amendments, and to try to make the bill better. And these amendments are, they basically provided an amendment to not allow Medicare to be turned into a voucher or a premium support system. There was an amendment to oppose any cuts to Social Security. Another amendment to support Social Security expansion, so expanding benefits for everyone under Social Security. And then finally, one to improve access to long-term care. Because if any of you remember, back when the Affordable Care Act passed, there was actually a proposal that was in there and became law to have some sort of long-term care insurance. Unfortunately, the proposal, the way it was written, wasn't very well. It wasn't very well written. It wasn't a mandatory program. It was a voluntary program, and it was going to cost too much money to implement. So that was rescinded by the Obama administration. So we need to come up with something else to fund long-term care. And that was one of the amendments. Everything was voted down by the Republicans. So what's next in the whole budget process? Well, again, there was no budget, that passed the floor. The budget only, was only brought up in the committee, but it didn't come to the House floor. So right now, the Republicans are operating without a budget. What they will probably do is, and this is what they are doing right now, is move individual appropriations bills. And what they're doing is they're pushing their favorite bills through first. So one of the bills that they've got that has been brought up is the defense bill, and they're increasing funding for defense by $18 billion. But again, this breaks with the sequester agreement, because remember, with the sequester, there was supposed to be this 2% cut. The agreement was that, that the sequester would hit all programs alike, defense and non-defense. The Republicans are pushing to increase funding for defense. So in the Senate, the Democrats are pushing their own amendment to say, okay, we also need to increase funding for non-defense. But what happens is that when you have when you don't have a budget and you have individual bills going through, is that a lot of those individual bills are eating up the funding, and by the time you get to the end of the other appropriations bills, like labor HHS, which funds Social Security Administration, it also funds the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the things that we care about. They're going to have a difficult. They're going to end up getting HHS, especially this year. There are a couple things. As I'm sure you've heard, the Vice President has a cancer initiative, to try to speed up cancer research. So they're trying to increase funding for NIH. There's also this Zika problem, which is this mosquito-borne virus that is basically come to our, right now it's the summer and the mosquitoes are coming to our shores. But not only that, we have people traveling overseas that are bringing the Zika virus to our shores. And so we have that, so they need to increase funding for Zika. So all of that is going to take money away from some of the programs that we care about in the labor HHS budget. So what will most likely happen is that if they are not able to come to a full agreement on any of the bills, what they'll do is they'll have to do a continuing resolution that kind of keeps funding level, but doesn't provide any additional funding. And as you know, there are more people joining the Social Security rolls. There are more people joining Medicare. So we, the cost, even though there was no cost of living adjustment, we know that there is an increase in cost of living, and we really need to provide more funding for a lot of things in Congress. So the continuing resolution is not going to be sufficient, but that may be what they'll get stuck with. And then the other thing that could happen is that if they are able to agree on a few bills, then they will become like an omnibus. They'll be included in the omnibus, and then there'll be a continuing resolution for other appropriations bills that are not passed by Congress. So just wanted, yes.
Just a question. You keep on talking about the continuing resolutions.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, and that's almost what the Congress does, which is good or bad. Mm-hmm. And when our president has an executive order, I mean, it's almost like they got different things, the same thing for different levels of government. If the executive order is so bad, why is the continuing resolution so good?
Well, the continuing resolution just doesn't, I never said the continuing resolution.
No, it's not that. I just look at it from my mind.
Right. The continuing resolution, it keeps, the one thing that Congress has to do, the one thing that they are, required to do is they have to fund the government.
But the executive
So they have to do it somehow. And if they cannot come to an agreement how they're going to fund it, then, what they end up doing is passing level funding, which is a continuing resolution.
I know.
That's not a good thing.
No, I know that, but I look at it that they can't, if the president can't get something passed, he's going to do something, which is called an executive order.
Right.
Okay, I'm
But
sorry.
the
I'm sorry, I got a quantum leap that.
Okay, but the executive order does not.
Right? Yeah. You get it.
The executive order doesn't provide funding, though. They can't provide funding.
I know, but
it's Congress,
Okay.
The worst case scenario is they're kicking the can down the road.
Right.
So the master of bankruptcy becomes our president, and we're all in the toilet.
Amen.
When you use the term omnibus, what does that mean?
Omnibus is just basically where they put a bunch of appropriations bills together, and sometimes, and fund it that way. It's again, the omnibus would be certain appropriations bills where they've agreed to increase funding, and then the CR are others where they did not come to an agreement, and that would just be level funding, whereas the omnibus would provide a little bit more funding.
Is that where they tack on all those little
And
barrel
that's,
things?
yes, and when they do omnibus, they end up putting their little pet projects in there. They sneak in things that are not good, that we don't like. That's what, happens.
That's what got us cutting the prison retirees.
That's correct. That's when they cut retiree benefits.
They did that in the middle of the night, and everybody was asleep, and they got stuck.
Exactly, and some people call it the Christmas tree. It's like a Christmas tree. It's something that's moving, and people add all these different, things to it. Kind of like you add lights to a Christmas tree, and it has like all kinds of things that pet priorities that oftentimes don't get a full hearing, and they just get passed through in the dark of the night. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is Zika funding. Again, this is the mosquito-borne virus that was running rampant in Latin America, in certain parts of Latin America like Brazil, Colombia, I think some places in Central America as well. And what it does is it causes microcephaly in children. It's something that, which basically is a malformation of the brain. It's like the brain doesn't grow like it's supposed to. What NIH has said is that it costs about $10 billion for each child that ends up having, a lifetime of care for a child with microcephaly is $10 billion. So it's very, very costly. And we really need to try to do a number of things. We need to try to do more research into vaccines to treat, the Zika. We need to do more diagnostic testing. We need some tools to be able to diagnose if somebody has the Zika virus or not. And then we need vector control so that, to be able to go and spray for mosquitoes. We've known about this because this is something that, happened, was happening in Brazil and in Colombia, those areas back in, the fall of last year. So we've known that this was happening. The president asked for $1.9 billion to deal with this back in February. And would you believe it that they have not been able to come to an agreement, neither the House nor the Senate? The Senate was finally able to come up with bring a bill that provided $1.1 billion, which is a little more than half of what the president is asking for. The House, however, they have only agreed to allow the administration to shift money from other programs like Ebola, public health preparedness. They're going to allow them to take $622 from those other programs that are also very important and earmark it for Zika. Now, what has to happen is that because the two sides are different, they have to come to a conference and agree to, there needs to be one bill that passes both houses that gets sent to the president to sign. They went away for Memorial Day and didn't fund it. And now just today I read that Mitch McConnell is saying that they're going to go to conference and try to iron out the differences. This is like 4 months after the president's initial request, which is really terrible. So now they are, just like I said, they're just now starting to do negotiations to figure out how much funding. But we were able, one of the things that the Alliance does is that we work in coalitions. And so there's a coalition that is called the Leadership Council of Aging Organizations. They are 72 aging organizations that come together, and we work together to push legislation that we support or oppose. So we were able to actually for Zika funding, we have not done anything in the coalition, but we have, as an organization, done some letters to the editors, that we've printed out saying that this is a public health emergency and basically Congress needs to stop dragging its feet and they need to pass something. So that's what we've done with regards to Zika. Now, with regards to Puerto Rico, how many of you guys heard about the Puerto Rico bill and what's happening there? Okay, some of you do. Okay, well, Puerto Rico is having a real bad problem. They're basically in bankruptcy, and they have had, and it's for a number of reasons. I mean, Puerto Rico had a lot of pharmaceutical companies that were there on the island. A lot of those pharmaceutical companies have left Puerto Rico, so they don't have the revenue coming in. So they have this massive debt, and they've actually defaulted on the debt. They have another $2 billion that's due in July, and back in December of last year, Congress was supposed to come together and do something. They didn't, and so there is a bill to try to do something for Puerto Rico, but it is a negotiated bill. Basically, the bill was something that was brought up in the Natural Resources Committee, and there's been a lot of negotiations happening, and what the bill does is it creates a finance board to basically oversee the finances of the island. It does allow for waiving the minimum wage requirement for young workers. That's something that we, as Democrats have have a lot of problems with. They also allow them to waive overtime pay for a period of time. And one of the most concerning issues is that it prioritizes bondholders over pensioners. So a lot of the public sector retirees, like teachers and people that work for the government of Puerto Rico, that are now relying on their pensions, are going bondholders that have Puerto Rico bonds are going to get paid before. And so as I was telling you before, we work with coalitions. So through the Leadership Council of Aging Organizations, we were able to get a letter, and it was sent up yesterday to the Hill, to say we have concerns that you were putting bondholders above pensioners. And that was something that I'm actually a co-chair of one of the committees at LCAO, which is the Income Security Committee. We were able to get 29 organizations to sign on to that letter. And as I said, that was sent up because they are voting on the Puerto Rico bill today. I don't know that it is going to change, but at least we're able to let them know that we're not happy with it. Depending on what happens on the floor, we'll have to see if it actually passes or if they are back to the drawing board. The other thing that we worked through coalition on is the public trustees issue. Social Security and Medicare have like public trustees. They have two public trustees that serve 4-year terms, and then they also have other members of the administration that serve as trustees. But there are two people from the public that are selected, and their job is to go and oversee the trust fund, make sure everything is fine, and they're supposed to be looking out for the best interest of pensioners, of Social Security beneficiaries, Medicare beneficiaries. Well, the two people that were reappointed by President Obama is Charles Blauhaus and Robert Reichauer. Now, Charles Blauhaus was actually the key person in the Bush administration that pushed privatization of Social Security. And he has been serving as our trustees, and again, they're putting him up to serve again as trustees. He also works for the Mercatus Center. Well, the Mercatus Center is a very conservative group. They receive a lot of funding from the Koch brothers. And of course, we all know that the Koch brother wants to destroy Social Security. So as a spokesperson for the Mercatus Center, he should really now be serving as the public trustee. The other person, Robert Reichauer, he is a budget person. He worked as as the director of the Congressional Budget Office, but he is so focused on the deficit that he doesn't really focus on beneficiaries. So we basically work together with another coalition called the Strengthened Social Security Coalition, which is over 300 national and local groups that come together to support Social Security. So we went up to and lobbied personally all the members of the Senate Finance Committee, because that's who votes on the nominations. We also had because Senator Wyden is the ranking member on that committee. He is from Oregon. We had our Oregon people contact his office and say, don't allow this nomination to go forward. We were very lucky to have several people come up and say that they would oppose it. One is Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio. Senator Charles Schumer from New York was also very, very helpful. He actually put together he actually authored a blog post that appeared in the Huffington Post 2 days ago about why it was so bad to reappoint these guys. He mentioned that it is basically like the fox watching the hen house. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is, right? Well, he was very instrumental. Our New York Alliance folks made numerous calls to Charles Schumer's office to thank him for everything that he's doing. Basically, the committee voted on it just yesterday. It was completely party line vote. Democrats all opposed it. Republicans all supported it. Including Rob Portman from Ohio. Anybody here from Ohio? No? Okay. I'm surprised that running for re-election that he actually would have supported that, but he did. So anyways, and Charles Grassley, who in the past has been opposed to renominating, he's been on record in the past saying that the public trustees should only serve one term. Meanwhile, he supported the reappoint, they voted for these people to be reappointed. Anyways, now that it's passed the Finance Committee, it goes to the Senate floor. And we're lucky because we have about 3 holes on them, which means that any senator can put a hold on something on an appointment if they are unhappy about an issue. And so we have 3 very strong holds. So I think we can say that their nomination is dead because those holes really stick together. So So that, I'm glad you realized that, because that was a big victory for us. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, just a couple of days ago, Speaker Ryan came up with his anti-poverty initiative, and I actually misspelled initiative, I apologize for that, but it's supposed to be initiative. He, they come up with these great terms. They always, you always, when you read what the name of their bills, or when they say what it is that they're doing, it's almost the opposite of what they're doing. He's saying that it's anti-poverty, it's actually going to lead to poverty. One of the things that it's going to require is it's going to require folks to work. It's going to do block grants, which means that states are going to get a limited amount of money to make do. It also has tax credits. And I haven't had a chance to read it, but I was reading some of the different discussions about it and what it really means. And one of the things that it would do is it would eliminate cash payments. So for someone who's receiving supplemental security income, which is basically, it's the payment for really low-income individuals. It's for, it can be for children, women, elderly. It's a very small amount of money. He would eliminate that and basically put in place services. So they would, children, would get, or anyone would be able to get services, but they wouldn't get this money. When they do that, what they're really doing is basically reducing funding. It's a clever way to go about and say, hey, we're going to do this anti-poverty initiative, and we're going to change the way you get money. You're going to, instead of getting cash, we're going to give you services, but they're going to eliminate funding for the services. And it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. The other thing that it's doing is it's going to abolish the Department of Labor's fiduciary rule. Now, President Obama just instituted this rule, and what this rule does, it says that for people that are investing money, for if you have some money that you are able to invest in on Wall Street, like let's say you want to put a little money away for your retirement, and you have these guys that are telling you should put your money in this, put your money in that. These advisors, they are many times selling you stuff that is in their best interest and not in your best interest. And it's been found that $17 billion is lost because people put their money in something that helps the advisor and not the individual. So that's money that's taken out of people's retirement. And so the president basically redid the rules with regards to providing investment advice, saying that you have to be a fiduciary, and as a fiduciary, you have to make sure that the advice you're giving is in the best interest of your client. And of course, Wall Street went ballistic, and they're trying to overturn that. So what happened was the House actually passed something to overturn it. It went to the Senate. The Senate also passed it. Now it's in the president's, it was sent to the president. The president, vetoed it, and now they are trying through the anti-poverty initiative. What does the anti-poverty initiative have to do with people putting money away for their retirement, It's crazy. Well, they're trying to do away with it any way they possibly can.
This Ryan, he's trying to pretend that he's trying to get rid of poverty.
Right.
He is. So apparently what you're saying is that instead of giving the individuals the money to spend at their discretion, he wants to give them services.
Right.
That,
Correct.
and he doesn't want them to spend that money on cigarettes and drugs and tattoos. Right. So
What?
Drugs and tattoos.
Well, I think oftentimes you need it for food. Oftentimes you need it for other things. Not necessarily cigarettes, not necessarily. And so, you are not getting a specific thing. Let's say you have a disabled child. There might be a specific thing that you need to buy for your disabled child. It could be like, maybe it's a computer to help him, talk. Maybe it's, something that's going to help him. Now you're not going to, be able to have that money to do that. But most of the time, the money that we're talking about, you know how much SSI, what people get on SSI? about $600 a month. You can't even pay rent for that. So that's just barely to keep food on your table.
Right.
That's,
But like
not
you
much.
say, they cut the money out and offer you service, and then don't fund the service, so
Right.
you're basically getting nothing.
You're getting nothing.
You're getting nothing.
Well, but it's a sneaky way, because if you're getting $600 and all of a sudden Congress comes back and says, we're only going to give you $500 or we're only going to give you $400, people are going to get up in arms, right? But if you decide to say, no, we're going to give you services, nobody realizes that they're only giving you $400 worth of service, not the $600. See? So that's the
Every
problem.
state and every city is different. They give more money different in states than the others.
Not when it's
Well,
federal.
SSI is a federal program, but yes,
Security income.
right, yes. So, okay, so I just want to, we're talking about where the Republicans are. They want to do is cut. And where the Democrats, President Obama just a couple days ago, I think it was last week actually, like on Thursday or Friday of last week, he came out and actually said we need to expand benefits for Social Security. And he also said we need to require, yes, this is a huge win. We've been trying to get him to say this forever. This is also a huge win for all the advocates that have been pushing and saying we need to expand benefits. I don't know if you guys recall, but a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, there was talk of a chain CPI, which was going to cut the cost of living adjustment for seniors. And we don't even have one this year, but they were going to cut the cost of living adjustment for seniors, and we had a human chain against it.
And the argument that I put to everybody I talked to, everywhere that I went, was the chain CPI is will cut you from the cradle to the grave, and that promise they made then, that people over 55 was false, and they're doing it again, and we got to call them on it.
Right. So, remember 5 years ago, Congress was talking about chain CPI in Congress. There was the Bowles-Simpson, then there was the super committee. Everybody was talking about cuts. Now all of a sudden, we've got people talking about expansion, and we have the leader of the Democratic Party talking about, the top leader talking about, expansion. And of course, we know that both candidates are talking about expansion. We have Secretary Clinton, we have Senator Sanders, all talking about expansion. So if you want to talk to people about where the Democratic Party is, where our candidates are, and where Trump is, and I know Trump has come out and said that he doesn't want to cut Social Security. We don't really know what he's going to do when he gets there, because he changes his mind every day. He keeps changing it all around. But I can say he's not talking about expansion. But we have all the Democrats in line to push for expansion. So I think that's very important to know.
It's kind of sad. I love Obama, but it's sad that he would come up in the 7th year and
Right.
say this instead of the first year.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
That's too late.
I agree with you. Well, at least he finally said it. But the other thing I was talking about, where the Democrats are. One of the important things that will be happening is that the platform committee of the Democratic Party will be drafting the platform for the party, and they're going to be having hearings around the country. I think the first one is today's Thursday. Yeah, the first one is today here in D.C. There's another one in Arizona, I believe it's Arizona, yes, that will take place next week. And we actually did a couple things. Through this LTAO coalition that I talked about, we actually provided recommendations for the language, and in that language was recommendation to expand Social Security benefits. And then the other thing that we are working to do is to get someone from Arizona to go and provide testimony about why it's important to expand Social Security, why it's important to keep Medicare with guaranteed benefits and not make changes that are going to privatize the Medicare system. So again, with regards to what we've done, part of the year has been again focused on legislation, but Congress will be leaving either the first or the second week of July, so we have about another month where they're going to be here, and then they're going to retire because each party has their own convention in July, and then they're out all of August, and then they won't come back till September. So much of our focus at the Alliance is going to be on the primaries and on endorsing candidates So one of the things that we do is we send out a candidate questionnaire. As soon as the congressional primaries are over, we send one to the Democrat and the Republican. We wait for feedback, and then we start doing endorsement candidates. And when we do the endorsements, we either send a letter of endorsement, and when they're a high-profile candidate, we actually do an event. And I know, like Dave Minell from Missouri is working on doing a huge endorsement event. And in some cases, those endorsement events are going to be around the Social Security and Medicare birthday anniversary, where we also do huge events around the country. And many of those will be with our favorite candidates, whether they're for Senate, governor, or some other local official that we're trying to get elected. So, speaking of the elections, yes.
Yeah, before we get too far, can you tell us what the LCAO is?
Yes, it's the Leadership Council of Aging Organizations. And it's 72 aging groups in D.C. that come together, and we fight for the things that we support, which is usually making sure there are no cuts to Medicare, making sure that there are no cuts to Social Security. We fight for things like Meals on Wheels, the Older Americans Act funding, things of that nature. So again, one of the things that you guys all of us will be doing is voting. And we need to be we need to find out what the law is in our state, because there's been changes in all different states. For instance, in Oregon, you can actually vote by mail. It's the only way you can vote is by mail. Then we have, like in Arizona, there was an article the other day that they changed the law. It used to be that groups or organizations could go and pick up the early ballots and turn them in. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So there are things that, may be changing, and part of the reason they're doing it is that there's this concerted effort to try to keep people away from the polls.
Yes.
In Arizona, they're mailing it.
Are
They're mailing the early ballot.
Okay.
They already put mine in.
Okay, good, okay. And I know there's been a lot of, I think people can still go and tell people, hey, you need to mail it in, hey, you need to, but, in the past, it used to be you could go, and let's say there was 10 people that couldn't walk in your community, you could go and pick up the ballots and go turn them in. You can't do that anymore. So we have to figure out other ways, what it is that we can do, what is legal.
In my area, Kansas City, Missouri, you can go and ask for a sample ballot. That's what I do all the time, and pass it around the older people.
Right.
So they know what's going on.
Right, but you have to make sure that that's still allowed, so it's, let me go a little bit into this. I was saying that people are trying to keep us from voting, and it's the Koch brothers that are and many other groups that are really trying to strip our rights. They have a very long agenda, this whole list. They want to take people's pensions away. Yeah. They want to eliminate social services. They're trying to privatize, public services. They want to, cut taxes for the wealthy. Eliminate worker protections, things like the minimum wage, They want to profit off mass incarcerations, and of course they want to destroy unions. And
they also want to
silent
get
the
rid of Social
majority.
Security too.
right, exactly. And basically, what they're trying to do is they want to silence the majority, and they want to be able to continue to hold on to power. So this one is really interesting. How are they doing this? Well, some of them they do by gerrymandering, which is where they create these very weird districts and try to get like all the minority in this one district so that they can have more Republican seats. So one is gerrymandering, the other is voter ID laws. They are limiting polling places and limiting voting hours. So this is just a cute little thing about how it is that they are doing this. I'll read it to you, and I think that on your handout you can't read it. But basically, these are some of the legislation that at the state and local level. This is a way to suppress the vote, okay? Photo ID requirement is one of them. Cutbacks in early voting. Proof of citizenship requirement. Partisan voter purges. Now, do you know what those are? The voter purges? Where they actually go through the voting rolls. And if somebody hasn't been voting, they'll just purge them. And you might, let's say for whatever reason, you might have not voted in a couple of elections, and maybe now all of a sudden you're really inspired to go vote, and your name doesn't appear on the ballot, so you can't, or on the, they don't have you as a registered person, and you can't vote. So this is one of the things that they're doing. And to same day registration, because there were some places that you could register on that same day. And basically regulations discouraging registration drives. Those are some of the ways that they're doing. And I have a personal experience that one of my friends put on Facebook, where she went to vote in North Carolina for the primary a couple of weeks ago, and she said that the line, well, first of all, yeah, well, it wasn't the line so much. She said that she got there and her name, because she has two, she uses her name plus her husband's name, so her name is too long, and they basically said that they couldn't find her, and she had to wait forever until they were, because she's a frequent voter, she was still there, but it took them a really long time. So people that are rushing, maybe they have to go back to work, may not stick around. She's a stay-at-home mom, so she was able to do that. And she's, she's a person that, was just,
Well, she had a hyphenated name?
I think she had a hyphenated name, and so it was just too long, and that was, so that's a real problem. And that is a problem, and they try to keep women from voting, they try to, keep minorities from voting. It's just really bad. So what I'd like to recommend everyone to do is, find out what the law is in your state. And the AFL basically has a website where they keep basically what the issues are in every state. And I know that they're updating them. So they don't have it for every state yet, but I know they have it for like Florida. They have it for a lot of the larger states. Some of the smaller states, like Montana, I think they don't have it up yet. Doesn't mean that they'll get to it, but they just, But this is the, if you want to go to that website and get it. I think there's a phone number too that you can call if you want to find out more information. And they do give you like the actual date of voting, when the primary voting dates are, all of that information on there. But then they also have like a sheet that gives you all of what the laws are, whether you need, what kind of ID you need, that kind of stuff. And then just wanted to remind everyone to make a plan to vote. Sometimes it's just good to, and I know you guys are all good at it, but even like talking to your friends and asking them to, hey, have you decided, who you're voting for, and what time are you planning to go vote, or is it in the morning, is it, in the middle of the day, and try to get them to have in mind ahead of time when they're planning to go cast their votes. And that's my presentation. Yes?
If any of you have influence on where you can have your polling place, I recommend that you do what a group of us did in our polling place in St. Charles County. We have a very anti-Democrat, anti-person running the election commission. We maneuvered to have the polling place changed to a church, and we didn't do it. We had the parishioners do it. The key to this whole move was we could get almost 300 people inside the church when they closed the door at the closing time of polling. And once they're inside the building, they had to vote.
Good
That
idea.
was something that, looked at what was going on around St. Louis, Kansas City. They had long lines outside around the buildings, and they closed the door and said, you folks can't vote.
That's a federal violation.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Well, I'm telling you what they did,
Well, some people,
St. Louis area.
but usually
St.
it's
Charles
churches
was
and
in
The
schools.
schools, because that's a public facility and
We
it's
had
not
this church.
nobody's trying to get you to join.
Right, but when they do it at church, they can't be asking.
But they are passing out literature and stuff in my area. I'm getting ready to-
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'm getting ready to stop.